there's this magical thing called the better alphabet. And when I say magical, it's because it's the fastest way, not just like in general, the fastest way, I'm going to go all the way out and say on planet Earth, to get the individual letters and sounds into the heads of a kid. I'm not even going to say 5. You can actually, I wouldn't do this with a 3-year-old. There's absolutely no point. But you could, because they can sing the Itsy Bitsy Spider. And we're using the same area of the brain, which is muscle memory, to capture what's in the better alphabet that we use to sing any songs with our kids as they're just starting to play and explore language. Now, I'm not saying go grab a 3-year-old and do this, because there's no point and they don't need to do it. But I am saying it's that easy. Now, there are some tricks with muscle memory. You have to cheat, because muscle memory can get locked in like autopilot. It's like a read-only disk. It's not really helpful for learning in a lot of ways. But this whole session is going to be about not just knowing the brain system for learning, but knowing how to use them to our advantage. So because we have muscle memory, and we're going to look at how this works, because this is a key piece to get us kind of rolling with this backdoor to the brain idea that we're going to talk about. Muscle memory is the fastest way to grab those individual letters and sounds, because it bypasses all developmental issues, language barriers, articulation, working memory. It goes to a different area of the brain. And it's the first example of how we're going to cheat the brain. So instead of just saying you're going to see a slide and a clickable arrow to learn more about it, we're actually going to get to talk about it for about 15 minutes before we officially dive in. So what I want to do is make sure you understand what it is, what it looks like, and how to do it with your kids. I'm going to let this little group of pre-K students demonstrate it. It's only about 15 seconds on this clip because it's from Instagram. But what I want you to notice is the non-conscious retrieval that's occurring, meaning they're singing it, it's coming out, there's no processing time trying to remember cognitively what sound the letters make. It flows right off the lips, tongue, and teeth. But you're also going to see one of the little girls doing this, because she knows that the other key piece to this is something called eye glue. Not just muscle mouth, but eye glue. You've got to see what you sing and sing what you see. You want to forge the letter sound connection in the brain, symbol to sound. And if you've looked at or read about the science of reading, because we're going to be talking about that a little bit as well, orthographic mapping in the brain means there's a tight sound symbol connection that's automatic. So sounds and symbols are forged in such a way that when kids see a symbol, the sound pops out. When they hear a sound, they know instantly what symbol represents it, what symbol goes with that speech sound. This is what you'll see happening in these next couple of slides, and it's the easiest way to make it happen, but it's taking a backdoor route. It's just one example of this totally different way we're going to attack these sounds. Now, the rest of the presentation is going to be about what happens when letters come together and don't do what they should. But this is an important piece because it's often missed since there aren't stories about individual letters, and that's because they're not needed. And you'll see why. Now, did you hear the C? It can also say, so it said C says, but it can also say, that's because C has both sounds. And the most likely one is the one that comes out of their mouth first, because that's how it's put in. This is the really neat, magical kind of secret sauce there, because they don't just know the individual letters. They can get into the nooks and crannies of every possible thing a letter can say by itself. So we're not talking about phonic sounds, by itself in the most likely order. Because when you're reading and you attack a word, you want to attack it with the most likely sound. So if you see the letter C in a word, you want to try before you would try S. So G, same thing, G, J. Y, not just Y, it can also say E or I by itself without any other letters. So all of that is built into this better alphabet progression. Now the trick here is, because with muscle memory, there's a danger spot. And if you've ever sung the 12 months of the year, you know this, or the 7 days of the week, or the 50 nifty states. What happens when kids sing a song? Like for instance, 12 months of the year, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, whatever your song is. And you ask the child, what comes before July? What do they have to do to answer your question? Sing it. What happens if they, which they always do, sing past that part all the way to the end because they get caught up in the song. And then you say, okay, so what came before July? And they don't know. What do they have to do? Start over. And it's almost like they have a read-only disc or it's like they have a little encyclopedia in their head that they can pull out, but it only comes out in one way and it only goes from beginning to end. And only if they're paying very close attention to what it is they're singing, can they then answer the question? So it's two parts of the brain working at once. It's the automatic non-conscious part that can just sing and not even know it's singing. Because, you know, sometimes we do that. You ever been singing and like your neighbor just hits you and said, stop singing that song. And you're like, oh, I didn't even realize I was doing it. It's a non-conscious retrieval. It's simple. It's easy. No processing needed. You can sing a song to words you don't even know, and you just make them up, and it's the same way you sing it every time, and they're not even real words because it's not something you're processing or thinking about. It's non-conscious. So if kids are going to use that information, then it's this part of the brain that actually has to tune in to pull it out. Now, that's not going to work well for individual letters and sounds because letters by default need to be flipped and flopped and manipulated for the purpose they serve. It's a great way to learn 50 nifty states because you don't need to be manipulating the states and capitals. You just need a way to recall, like sing it all the way through, you know, get to whatever, Michigan, and then pull out the capital. So that's easy, but not for letters and sounds. But if we know that this is such an easy in, we can look to see why it's a problem. And the reason it's a problem is anything that's encoded pitch, rhythm, and intonation is going to be processed by this earlier developing, more primitive part of the brain, which is good. That's why it's so easy to get in, even to a kid who doesn't know where his own foot is. The problem is, because it didn't take any processing to get in there, no understanding to get in there, it can't be processed when it's there. But if you break that pitch, rhythm, and intonation up so that that song is not one song, it's 26 mini songs, which means it starts over on every single letter. Now they have access to actually pull the sound they want from the letter they need without having to start at A, because it literally starts over on every single letter. Now I'm going to show you what this looks like so you can see what I'm talking about, but this is the neat part about understanding the brain system for learning, because we can take the good parts and then we can pull out the bad and use the things that are going to get us way ahead, but not be stuck with the part that goes with it. So it works really well for the individual letter sounds. I guess you could probably use it for some other, you know, content that you're learning, but for the most part, content in general is fine to learn through music. It's just not fine when the information has to be manipulated constantly. Now, I'm going to show you exactly what this looks like. I'm going to play this video of me doing part of it so you can see this, and then I'm going to show you how kids can retrieve the sound they need from the letter they want without having to go back all the way through. This is just to give you a better idea of a little bit more of it so you can see it. You do not need this video. I made it for COVID because we couldn't tell where kids' eyes were. And the two key pieces with this working to become this forged sound symbol connection in the brain, you have to see what you sing and sing what you see. So you've got to work your lips, tongue, and teeth because it's muscle memory that's going to capture this, but you have to see what you're singing. If kids aren't looking at the letter that they're singing, then what will happen is they'll know all the letter sounds, but they won't have any idea what letters go with them, which means they can't use them to read or write anything. So eye glue and muscle mouth are important. And because with COVID, kids were looking at a screen, you didn't know as a teacher if you're singing this where their eyes were. Even if you're holding up a letter, you don't know that they're looking at it. So I did this and I had the letters superimposed behind me so they couldn't not see them. So I'm just going to play a little bit of it. If you, though, are in your regular classroom, it's really better for you to sing this in real time with your kids, pointing to the actual alphabet anchors in your class, because it shows them where they're going to go to get back to them. You know, the problem with showing things on a video is when the video goes off, so do all the anchor connections. So some kids make the translation and they know, oh, well, those are just up here above the board. But, you know, some kids don't connect that the letters above the board are the same letters up here. So if you do have the video and you use it, just let this be only one of the 2 times a day that you're using it. And I do apologize if anybody's not needing individual letter sounds and you're wanting me to get to the meatier stuff. Just keep in mind, you know, ELL kids are going to start over again when they come, and they're going to need to start right at the beginning. So you'd be surprised at whatever grade level you teach when you need that trick in your pocket to pull out and get kids caught up fast with non-English speaking. So I'm going to play this part just really quick. Just play a little bit of it. He says, but he can also say, he says, C says, but it can also say, D says, E says, but it can also say,
but it can also say
Now I'm going to stop that there, but you notice for the vowels, there was a motion. That's because the vowels are too nebulous. They're too ambiguous to be captured by the muscles. If you play a sport, tennis, golf, even if you play piano, anything that involves body intelligence, muscle memory, you know, where you do it enough that you don't think about it, it's part of your body can just take over. Like a tennis swing is a perfect example. You train to be able to have a fluid motion so that you're not micromanaging every part of that swing. The vowels are they're too close in their production for the muscles to be reliable to capture them. So we need another in. Now I'll explain what that in is when we get to that part, but they're the only letters that have a motion. Normally movement is great. We always want to incorporate that additional angle of learning with movement, not with a Better Alphabet Song. Not with a Better Alphabet Song. Can you guess why? Because this is one of the biggest things I see that's a misconception is like, you know, because Secret Stories isn't a program. So you will be pulling it together with whatever your reading program is. So let's say you've got a reading program that's like B says bear, buh, buh, buh. C says cat, meow, 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 whatever. Folks don't understand like, but why can't we keep doing our bear motion and our meow, meow, cat motion? Why do you think that would be a problem if we're doing the Better Alphabet Song and it's going through muscle memory? Any guesses? It's a tricky question. Any guess? You got it. They'll focus on the movement. When Johnny's acting like a bear, that's so much more cool to look at than the bee. And if everybody's watching Johnny be the greatest bear in the world, then B is gone and the sound is there, but the symbol's not. And the whole idea with orthographic mapping in the brain, which is just a fancy way to say sound symbol connection. See the symbol, make the sound, hear the sound, know what makes it. Like it's just a sound symbol connection forged in the brain. But that symbol's key. So yes, the muscle memory lets us cheat. That's the easy part. The hard part's focusing a bunch of little 5-year-olds on the letter as they're singing it. And that's why I used to do 2 awards, Boys Against Girls, eye glue, muscle mouth. And I would say, oh, the girls beat the boys yesterday. They got muscle mouth and eye glue awards. They got to line up first and go to recess first. Come on, boys, I know you can beat them. And the whole point was they've got to work their lips, tongue, and teeth so that this is really getting into the muscles, and they've got to see what they sing and sing what they see. Now, if they're moving around, now they have to do those motions for the vowels because that's what's going to hook them into the sound. And it's going to come from a feeling-based connection that we'll talk about in a bit. But all those other letters are best just focused in on the actual symbol. This is just showing you something we're actually going to talk about more when it comes to these social and emotional connections, which is the back door to the brain that we're going to hit. But the other part of what's in this back door in the brain is, again, this primitive icon-based visual, pitch, rhythm, intonation, all of these things that make up what the Better Alphabet Song is. Anytime you hear a song or even a rhythm, can you clap that back? Okay, let's try it. Hold on, we'll do it this time now that you know you're going to clap it back. Let me do it, and then you can do it immediately after. Good. Now, you didn't have to do math calculations or use your watch to know how many seconds or milliseconds were between each clap. You probably didn't count how many claps there were. I bet nobody could even raise their hand right now and say there were exactly 9 claps. Like, I don't even know how many claps there were. You retrieved that from a different area of the brain. It wasn't your cognitive, figure it out, let's think about it. It was a feeling, not a feeling like I'm sad, I'm happy, but more of a response, like an automatic instinctual response. That's that part of the brain. It's got a different way of recall that's not tied in with developmental readiness or language background or even working memory. It's a very different area of the brain. And that's the area we're hitting for this. The trick is split it apart, because if you sing one cohesive song, it's all locked together as a read-only disc. Now, here's what you're going to see about how kids can pull what they need if they can't remember what a letter says, and they can grab it. And keep in mind, this is not powerful information yet, because at the end of the day, kinder teachers will spend all year trying to teach individual letters and sounds, and kids still can't read anything. You know why? Because those individual sounds that letters make are almost never the sounds they seem to make in actual words when they come together with other letters. Because when that happens, it's called a phonics pattern, and often those are going to be taught in first grade or in second grade, or maybe even not at all. Especially, you know, for some kids, they're doing kindergarten stuff in first grade because they didn't even get their kindergarten skills. So in first grade, they're not doing first grade code stuff. They're not getting the blends and the digraphs or vowel combinations. They're still trying to get the alphabet letters. And then in second grade, they're backtracking, trying to teach what first grade was trying to teach. So now the kid's getting shipped to third grade, ready to read to learn. He hasn't even acquired the whole code yet, because developmental readiness is a real issue in K-1-2. We've got kids who are all over the map in kindergarten. Some of them are ready to just go and do and learn everything, and some of them can't find their own foot. And that's the norm. Like, that's not an unusual year. That's the expectation. That's just developmental readiness. It's just the way it is. So not having to rely on accessing the front door to get in is key. So this teacher posted this in the group, and I loved it because it exemplified exactly what I wanted to show, and with a student that was perfect to show it. She said, in September, this sweet little kindergartner was still 4, and that's because muscle memory is not based on readiness. So it doesn't really, the age doesn't matter. I just try not to say things like, oh, a 3-year-old can do it, because I'm afraid somebody's going to go grab a 3-year-old and force feed them something that's pointless for them to have, because they can't use it for any purpose yet. So it's not necessary. But the biology of muscle memory, 3-year-olds can stand like this, just like a 4-year-old can stand like this, just like a 5-year-old can stand like this. It's something that's a feature built in. So it's doable. It's just, I don't want to encourage anybody to actually do it. So, but anyway, this is different. She's in kindergarten. So she's eating, sleeping, and breathing all of these opportunities for reading and writing. So it is important for her. And the teacher said she was 4. She wasn't able to give me any sounds or letters. We sang the Better Alphabet song every day. And you want to do it twice a day, by the way, until mastery. And I would even hear the kids sing on their own when they were partnering. Fast forward to the first week of November and watch what she can do. Can you hear the beautiful dialect? There's a second language spoken at home. Now, it takes about 2 weeks to 2 months, depending on the situation of the learner. Your average kid's going to be pretty much done with their individual letters and sounds at the 2-week mark. Your kids who have some language barriers or some auditory deficits could take that full 2-month mark. But all of that's much better than a whole year being sucked up, trying to teach these individual sounds that actually aren't still advancing you into what you need to be able to read or to write anything. So let's listen to this. And by the way, it's all in random order. So what's interesting is, you know how you do a letter sound assessment and you point to different letters and they have to tell you what it is? Well, she's doing that. But the neat part is listen for where this lives in her brain, because there's no thinking time. And the reason is it's not happening where the brain processes that information. It's non-conscious retrieval. If this were a conscious executive function where kids are typically processing this information, like they're going, like they're thinking about it. They're trying to remember it. They might even be thinking elephant, So it's a process of recall. That's not what's happening here. And you can tell that because there's absolutely no lag. She goes straight from the letter to the sound it makes. Like there's no thinking time. And it's not that that's so impressive. It's because it's coming from the same place you would sing the itsy bitsy spider. Yeah, you didn't have to think about that. It's just, it rolls right off. And that's the really neat part. How about this one? Can we turn that up just a little?
But you can also say a. Yes. Yes. Hello, said yes. He said why said but you can also say E-R-I-O-E.
Yes. What she said at the end is Y says yeah, but it can also say E-R-I or E. Now, here's what has to happen for this to become usable. It has to transfer from back here, this part of the brain that has instant recall but can't apply it for a purpose, to the part of the brain that actually sees its use. Meaning, oh, I know what I get, like that letter's in this word. My name's Bob, and the B that goes B, it's in the name that's my name, that's Bob, and I hear the B sound in the word Bob, and that's why I get it now. The B is in my name because my name is Bob. Like that awareness, that kind of light bulb has to pop on for this information to be used. So it has to be transferred from this back door to the front in order to put to practice the reading and the writing. The good part is what spurs that is what we do already all day long. We're engaging with text all day long. We're reading, we're writing, we're doing our morning message. We're having them find their little cubbies with their name tags. We're looking at the math directions. We're looking at the menu choices. Or if you're in an upper grade, you're going through your content areas where text is everywhere and they're trying to read it. They're trying to write with it. So we've got already built into the day lots of opportunities to see how this is supposed to be applied. We just have kids that don't have the skills to apply it. Like they don't have the skills. We can read and write all day long, but if our kids are learning a letter a week, then they don't have the letters they need to actually do any of the reading and the writing. And if they don't have the phonics skills, even more so. So think about it like a key. If you give a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old a key and they don't know what a key does to a door, they don't have the cause effect yet, they could come up with lots of creative ways to play with the key. Like if I were a kid, I'd hold it up to the light and watch it. Like I could do this with it and it will make like a sparkly thing on the wall because it'll like reflect the light. Or you could put it in your pocket with some change and make it go jingle, jingle, jingle like a bell. But I wouldn't think to put it in a door until I understood its purpose. Now, if I'm around you and you're getting in and out of places all over the place, you got this really cool key ring and you're always using those keys to open the cabinet in the basement and the closet and the door. Well, at some point, depending on how with it I am, I'm going to think, I got one of those. And I'm going to pull it out of my pocket and look at it and go, this opens. So I'm going to get what it's for by being around its use all the time. But it wouldn't help me to be around its use if I didn't have the key. If I don't have the key, I'm just watching you do cool stuff with something I don't have anyway. The key is no pun intended. The key is to give kids access to move these skills through the back door so that every kid can have access to it. And then let their light bulbs kind of pop in as their ability allows. But at least we know we're getting those skills delivered. We're not standing at the front door, higher level processing. You need to understand it. Think how hard it is, for example, if you try to teach the letter B with a ball, because normally you do, like, B, ball, but. Think about this for a minute, how much trickier that would have to be cognitively. It's why it takes all year in kindergarten. Because first you have to know what a ball is. If I don't speak English, there's problem number one. Once I know that's a ball, now I have to segment. I have to be able to segment the sounds to know which sound is the B. Is it the B or the ah or the l? Once I segment b, all, now I know, okay, I got the sounds separated. It's the b sound that I want. So I've got to do all that just to get the sound from the picture after I segment and then isolate which sound I want and then remember that that's the sound I need. So that's a lot of steps. We don't have to do any of that if we take it in through this back door. Now it's just there. And the only thing we have to do is give them opportunities to use it. This is so interesting to me because there's a quote, and we're going to see this a few times. There's a Harvard-trained neuroscientist. Her name's Mary Helen Immordino Yang. And her scope of work is that it's neurobiologically impossible for kids to think deeply about things they don't care about. So if you can trigger them caring about it, they become obsessed with it. And when kids are obsessed with things, they never stop talking about it. It just like rings in their head all day long. It's hard to care about letters and sounds. It's hard to care about phonics. Even we don't care about phonics. It's literally just a means to an end to become a reader, to become a writer. It's not to become a phonics master. Like that's not the goal. It can feel like that nowadays because we're learning all about trigraphs and digraphs and diphthongs and triphthongs and scribbles and nasalizations and fricatives and so many terms. I think we should all be automatically honorary speech pathologists at this point because there's so much knowledge. But at the end of the day, the end user is a kid who's trying to learn to read. Like that's the end user for all of that information. So having buckets to deliver that to these 5-year-olds or struggling upper grade readers, that's the key. That's the hard part. I mean, that's where the hard work comes in. Once we wrap our head around all the information, how do we deliver it to Johnny who's eating his shoe and licking the carpet? That's the key piece. What I love is when we can trigger in the brain this need to know on the part of the learner. So this to me really exemplifies this as well, because this little kindergartner decided to write the lyrics to the Better Alphabet song. And boy, was he very specific that, like, look at this. A says ah, 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 but it can also say a, and he knows the AY secret, the AY secret, because they're like Fonzie, they're just too cool. So they stick up their thumbs and they go A, and that's the sound they make, which by the way is why he spelled AY. Just interesting, because simultaneously to the Better Alphabet, you're tossing out secrets. You're not waiting. You're not waiting, because teaching T is harder if you don't know why it never does what it should. You know, it does. It's so funny to me. I'll see this all the time. Oh, I'm doing the better alphabet, and we're going to do an intensive study of the alphabet before we start talking about the secrets. So we usually get to the secrets like in February or March. You can't intensively study the alphabet when it never actually does anything in real words that are like what it does in the alphabet. Like the only way to intensively study the alphabet is to just stare at the wall where you have it hanging. Because as soon as those letters jump into real words, all bets are off and entirely different sounds come out. So you can't, it's like studying a horse outside of any habitat, like no grass, no food, no interaction. It's just a horse in a box. How can you study something in such isolation? It's not possible. So the easiest way to teach a T is to have in your back pocket the reason why it never does what it's supposed to. Because, you know, we can tell kids, T says turtle, but it never will, because of words like this and them and those and that and they and the. It everywhere you look, on every book, on every page, on every line of every book of every page, you'll see a T. And I guarantee you it won't be saying t. It'll be saying because there'll be an H with it. And that's a first grade skill. So what does the poor kindergarten teacher do trying to reinforce T says t when literally it's unreinforced every time they turn around? It's so hard. And yet it's so easy if you give kids an if not then this, because our brain is a pattern making machine. So it's how we learn. Like if I can't park here, I'll park over there. If I can't park over there, I'm going to have to go next door and park at McDonald's. If I can't find a spot over there, you're going to have to pick me up because I'm not ruining my shoes. So we have this whole hierarchy of most likely, next most likely, if all else fails. That's the brain system for learning. Not it does, it doesn't. Not rule exception. We don't pull in and not be able to park and go, oh no, what will I do? I'm blank. I have no idea. Like we've got a backup instantly. So the backup is, yeah, T does say t, but you know what? Not when it's with this other letter, because you know how, well, actually, let me ask you this first. Raise your hand if your kids can tattle. Okay, anybody have kids that cannot tattle? If you do, I would love to know that. Okay, all kids know how to tattle. Raise your hand if your kids could tell you, or a sub, which kids are not allowed to sit together. If they're able, no matter how young or how old or what language they speak, could they let you or a sub know they can't sit together? Raise your hand if you think they could actually say why. Like they'd know why, like, because they're going to spit, because they play rough, because they always talk, because they out. Yeah. So they're just things they understand. T and H are not allowed to sit together ever. They're not allowed to sit together, just like you two. I've split you up how many times today already? You guys remind me of these two, because no matter how many times they're split up, they don't listen. Every chance they get together side by side. And you know why they can't sit together? Because when they do, they always stick out their tongues and they go, and that's the sound they make, which is why they're not supposed to sit together, but they don't listen. So if you pick up any book and you look at any page, guess who you're going to see over and over? T and H. Now, there's not a kid that you couldn't tell that to and then show this to. It doesn't matter that they don't know what a T is or an H. That's not the relevant part. What's relevant is if they see this symbol, would it prompt them to go? And the answer to that would be yes. Even a 3-year-old could look at this without even understanding what it's for and go. Now, that's called sound to symbol. You saw this symbol and a sound popped out. What if we reversed it and I just said, could you go point to the letters that aren't allowed to sit together? Because they always go. You could easily identify the culprit that made that sound because it's clearly depicted here. That's the perfect sound wall. Not tongues, not mouths going, you know, the 44 mouths on the wall. I'm not criticizing that because I know some schools and districts are required to have it up. And I will say with COVID, it was helpful with the masks on and you're online and kids can't see your face, and it's got its place. And it absolutely is helpful if you're working with structural abnormalities or structural speech issues that need to have diagnostic corrections in a small group, if you're a speech pathologist. But as a teacher trying to help a kid spell or read a word, finding the right tongue or mouth and the letters under it, using a mirror for kids to see what their mouth looks like as they then try to compare it to the 45 other mouths on the wall, is a very complicated multi-step task. Tim Shanahan wrote a wonderful blog post about how that would actually look if it were possible to be done. And since that time, a lot of the mouth pictures now, instead of being called like a sound wall to read and spell, it's more a sound wall to help support kids understanding their mouth positions. And I can get behind that. But for reading and spelling, it's got to be instant. And you want to go with what they know. If a mirror has to be involved, that's a whole nother level of chaos that kids would enjoy for all kinds of other things. So Bottom line is orthographically mapping that sound to this symbol. That's the goal of the game, because all we want to do is open the alphabet up to include another sound. So that when you go on your morning message to write the word this or that or the, you're actually doing something that connects back to what kids understand. Because otherwise there's only 26 letters in that alphabet and none of them say. So how do they get that sound when they want to write it? How do they figure out that sound when they want to read it? They're going to have to. Even in pre-K, you're not going to get away from this being part of the text that's all around. So if every time they see that T, they go, they'll be wrong 100% of the time. And the brain's a pattern making machine. So you know what it does with something that's not reliable? It throws it away because it's use it or lose it. If I can't use it, I don't need it. So it tosses it, which means you have to keep teaching it. You have to keep forcing them to know these individual letter sounds that are harder for them to get when they don't actually work. But what's really cool is when you can have credibility and you can say, look, T really does say T, just not when it's with H. That way you're consistent. It's not a just is, just as, you have to just remember, like it actually makes sense. It changes everything from the brain's perspective. Now, I didn't mean to get that far into what I was saying. I shouldn't have even gone off on that tangent. My focus here was supposed to be just that when kids get really connected with something that's meaningful to them, they're unstoppable and they start driving their own learning. So I love that this little guy was trying to write the whole song. This is a teacher. She's doing something called a letter run, which is really fun, but it's basically the step after the better alphabet. And I promise to get to the heavy duty hard stuff in just a second. But this is interesting because the letter run is supposed to be skip the name of the letter, because by that point they already know it, because better alphabet teaches the letter name, the sound. This is just see it and say it, see it, say it, see it, say it, see it, say it. And with the letter run, you can go in any order and do it to any tune. So you can do a short vowel version like this, while you're pointing to the letters. You could do the long vowel version, you could do it to happy birthday. My vowel cues are off. You could do it backwards, which I can't do I don't have the letters up here, but if I had the letters up here, I could. These guys are doing it in any way they want. So they're doing it to the tune of the normal letter run, which is just the ABC song, but they're going all out of order. And I just like kind of showing how this kind of builds this ability to see a symbol, make a sound, see a symbol, make a sound, see a symbol, make a sound. Because that's what a reader's going to be doing. I've seen it to Star Wars. One teacher posted her class doing it that way.
All right, here we go. To what tune? Jedi. To what? Jedi. Jedi style. All right, here we go. Ready, go. Abacus.
In the letter run, by the way, you don't get to make all the sounds for the letters like you do in the better alphabet because it's too fast. It's supposed to be mimicking what you do when you come to text and attack. So it's only the most likely sound you're attacking with. But there is a long or a short vowel version, because if you're doing the long vowel version, every time you hit a vowel, you only make the long sound. That's why that one's abaca de efaga. The short vowel one is abaca de effaga. So this is really fun to play with, but what it does is it builds speed and stamina and automaticity so that kids are tightening that connection of that sound symbol relationship, but in a way that makes them go, can we do it again? Can we do it again? Instead of something that you're doing that's, rote work, skill-based focus.